Hi everyone, welcome to episode 74 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar, thanks for listening. In this episode, I talked to Russell Marsden, one half of Band of Skulls duo Marsden and Richardson. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Juno Award-winning singer-songwriter Donovan Woods about his new Big Boy Hurt EP, his love for Oasis, songwriting and much more. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at accessnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
3 big name album reviews on the website this week. Franz Ferdinand are back with a greatest hits album covering the best of their output over their 5 studio albums, including their self-titled 2004 Mercury Prize winner. Hits to the Head features 18 already released tracks and 2 brand new songs. Laurie Gava gives it 8 out of 10, saying it's an excellent overview of the band's output. If you listen to episode 72 of the pod, you'll know the Feeder's new album is called Torpedo. Grant Nicholas told Mark Millar all about it. Alex Hoggard's had a listen and gives it 8 out of 10, saying Torpedo achieves the band's aim of being an uplifting record. Finally, David McElroy's been listening to Kraftwerk's Remixes album and comes to the conclusion that Kraftwerk are so difficult to remix, only the band themselves can do it justice. On Remixes, they've done just that. Read the full reviews at xsnoize.com.
Russell Marsden and Emma Richardson first started writing songs together in their teens after meeting at school in their Southampton hometown. Forming Band of Skulls 17 years ago with drummer Matt Hayward, they went on to make 5 acclaimed studio albums together. Now the pair have temporarily stepped away from Band of Skulls to focus on a new musical project they've been dreaming about since their earliest songwriting days. In this interview, Russell Marsden talks about meeting Emma, Band of Skulls, writing and recording their eponymous debut album, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Russell Marsden. So let's go then. Hi Russell, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I love the album, so I've been wanting to talk to you about it for a while. But before we get into that, let's go back a bit. Go back to sort of what music was playing around the house when you were growing up?
I was lucky. I wasn't in a musical family per se, but my dad was a big music fan. So, and he would always say that when I was born was kind of the end of that era, you know, so he kind of blames me for it. But saying that, I had that lovely bit of his youth, basically. So it was kind of the second half of the 70s. And all the music that came out then, we were living down in the southwest at that point. So I was down in Cornwall. So it's very isolated, but we had a nice hi-fi. And I remember like Pink Floyd and also like the Sex Pistols. And I wouldn't make any difference between them. To me, it was just two cool things. Of course, probably in the era, you weren't allowed to like both, you know. So had that, and I heard lots of classic American bands at the same time, Fleetwood Mac, and also some weird ones. What's more interesting to me now is the records that still feel super relevant now, the ones that have survived being listened to in my childhood, and also what still speak to me now. And one of them tends to be my dad's favorite band, which is Magazine, Howard Devoto, and this kind of post-punk bit where it's like, you know, the Buzzcocks and all that thing happened, and there's this strange, well, it's not even strange, there's this really interesting bit that happened next, which influenced the bands that I grew up with, Radiohead and things like that. So Magazine, bands like Wire, bands like Devo, and all that kind of stuff started to really get to me and then stay with me as I became a teenager and then as I became a musician, and still relevant now, I think. So those are the ones I love the most.
When you mentioned Fleetwood Mac, people are still buying Rumours.
Yeah.
And it's a great album, but it just keeps on selling and selling and selling all these years later. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, those classic albums, it really is that, isn't it? I remember even seeing that, you know, the making of Behind the Music, I think it was, back on TV, and And just, there are some records that do something. It's kind of hard to put your finger on. And that's definitely one of them. When we first made our first record with Band of Skulls, some of the people, well, one of the people that really was behind the band getting to this next level, really focused on that Fleetwood Mac thing. And at the time, I loved Rumours. I also was familiar with the Peter Green kind of older version of Fleetwood Mac. But he was like, have you ever listened to Tusk? And I was like, well, no. My dad didn't. Well, he did have that one. We never played that one. So it's an even more interesting record. But yeah, Rumours is the one that's on the greatest albums of all time. And that's what's interesting. I think if you get into any band, you can go, especially now in this kind of streaming era, you can find the record that's the famous one and go either way on their back catalogue, and maybe find something that you love more, whether it's their last album or their first. Or so yeah, Fleetwood Mac's in there. I think it's been influential in the fact of the male and female vocal thing as well, that we've played with for so long. And also that transatlantic thing as well, which, although none of us are American, that's also seemed to be that has been a theme that we've been able to speak through throughout Band of Skulls and now into this new era, this side shoot. Yeah.
Before we get into that, but can you remember the first record that you bought yourself?
Oh my God. Bought myself. Well, the thing is, records are really expensive when I was buying records for myself. So I was probably a schoolboy. And luckily, again, we had that moment of Britpop, that exciting moment. And it was records coming out every week. So it would be probably something like, What's the Story? Yeah, it would be that, because we're just about old enough to go into town unaccompanied, and also have enough money to buy a record. So it was something like that, just after the middle of the 90s. And it was happening around us. It was a pop culture moment. I remember the feeling in the country. It was so exciting. And it was like day one of those records coming out. We'd go in and buy them the day they came out. It was the anticipation of the next big thing. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, well, I actually remember going into Belfast on the bus to buy Morning Glory. But
have you worn it out yet? I love, a great record if you've worn out the record or the cassette or scratched the CD or the case is all smashed up or something.
Well, I gave it away and then I just bought the CD because I was more CD, and I still am actually, but I still buy the odd vinyl, but I do have it in double vinyl now as well. I've had a few versions.
That would be it. And it wasn't just a record. It was like the whole country was, as they still are at the moments of, football and win or lose. It's like those songs, kind of the whole nation reverberated to that record. And it was a moment. So it was very exciting. And we were in bands, starting bands, last bit of school, long, hot summer. It was a pretty good moment, really. Yeah.
Can you remember the first band that you saw live? Yeah,
I do. I went to see, it was a little bit before that because I was a younger lad, and I went with my dad to see Deacon Blue, the Scottish, soulful rockers.
Great band.
Great band. Ricky Ross, fantastic songs. And, and a band that came out in that sort of strange era, I always like to play a game of what if that band arrived at a different moment? And, Deacon Blue in like the mid-70s would have been, Scotland's Fleetwood Mac or something, wouldn't it? And if they arrived now, they'd be a whole other thing as well. Yeah, really good. And I always loved his voice and the sort of truthful, the honesty of those songs. And there's some real great storylines in there. And yeah, I had no choice in that. I just got taken along, to wherever it was, Portsmouth Guildhall or something.
Yeah, I've seen them live myself. They're a great band, and Ricky has a solo album coming out this year sometime.
There you go. Yeah, Ricky Ross, great songwriter, great voice, and that band, one of the underrated bands, or one of those on that list, pretty high up, I think. And and then going back to like my first, if it was like the first bands I went to see, it would be here in Southampton, and I was going along a little bit after that, seeing bands like Blur, Reef, bands like that really were just in that there was such a diversity then in the late 90s of all these rock bands, and every week there was another one coming through, so we just go along, and it was also a great time to see bands at that time. So I got a very good education of not what to do or what not to do, but what I wanted to do, I think, you know, it was good.
Did you get a lot of education from the music magazines from the time? Because there was some great magazines around, obviously Q Magazine, Select. I remember I was very into smash hits and stuff like that back in the 80s.
A little bit. I remember getting the CDs off the front and having some like discovering bands that you wouldn't normally have got to, and there would be moments, wouldn't there? Like they'd have a CD of the festival lineup, and you would get into what was really interesting then as well is the crossover between the guitar music scene and this emerging dance scene, which took over, you know. And at that merging point, there were some really interesting things. One that stands out to me in the UK would be Chemical Brothers, and when they started to be not playing at the festivals and then being the thing, you know. And that late 90s moment was about that too. In our scene as well, we were listening to the bands, and also in my friends group, we were listening to a lot of American things. Beastie Boys later on, and then Beck and all those kind of those things that had that clash, you know, that kind of genre clash thing happening. So Noel G with the Chemicals was that, and also it was Beck coming over and doing Beck and the Dust Brothers, and anything that was kind of smacking things together was really interesting to me. And our band at the time, which turned into Band of Skulls, had a lot more of that electronic influence in the early days, I must say. We were trying to just do everything. So sometimes to great aplomb, and other times to absolute chaos and disaster. So we were into all of that, just trying to emulate all the things we were hearing. Yeah.
So talking about Band of Skulls, where did you meet Emma Richardson?
So we met at college in England. If you are in England, and if you're listening from somewhere else, we have a kind of secondary school up until we're about 16 or 17, and then often there's 2 years after that where you go to another place, and we met there, and it's where you specialize. And we turned out to be doing similar subjects, but we met in the kind of common area, and we met then, started talking music, and I'd been playing guitar and with Matt writing songs. Now we were looking for a third person, a bass player. I'd moved on from playing bass in our earlier even version, and we tried out a few people, and Emma came, and I think mainly because she didn't play bass before then, and wanted to sing, and had, you know, the kind of the breadth of having male and female vocals, and she also had a desire to write songs. And we thought this was the best match because it was the kind of strangest match in a way. We didn't want some flash bass player, you know. I don't know. We just wanted something to be cool. It seemed to fit, and so we met then, and we carried on from there. Yeah.
When you met, you said you were talking music. What sort of music were you just bonding over?
Well, really, we kind of just hoodwinked her into it, really. It was like, here's some songs we've written. We got a gig next week. And we had a gig the week after. So she just did what we were showing at the time. But of course, after that, there were some bands like I remember Blur being a big one with her. And then we then just grew up together, listening and bringing things in, and probably quite a lot of different taste, you know, which is always a good thing in a band. And putting those influences together, which started to turn into something which eventually became our band. Yeah.
What was the first song you wrote that you thought, right, this is a really good song?
Still trying for that one. That's the artist's curse, isn't it? The first one, I think, there's a song called Hollywood Bowl, which spans the era. Our first band was called Fleeing New York, and it developed from this very kind of retro and jammy band through to writing some interesting songs, and then started to become more original. And Hollywood Bowl was the song that basically spanned between Fleeing New York and what became Band of Skulls. The story goes that we went to LA and ended up playing on a shoestring budget. You know, we all stayed in the same room, and it was a very exciting time. And our thing was, let's write a song where we want to end up. So we wrote a song called Hollywood Bowl, and then we found ourselves, you know, in LA, which was ridiculous from some kids from the south coast of England. And we ended up doing a few gigs, making friends, very, very small time stuff. We ended up on a college radio station. We went on at midnight and played live on the air, like the Graveyard Shift, you know. And we did all this stuff, including Hollywood Bowl. And a few years later, I got a message saying, "Are you the band that does this song?" And a guy was over in LA and was trying to find us, track us down. So it might not have been the best song we ever wrote, but it was the one that changed our lives, you know, because we've had a fantasy about going to Hollywood, wrote this song, ended up there on a wing and a prayer. And then America came back asking about it. So really it might be the lucky feather in our cap of a song rather than the first good one.
It's just like a tale from a movie, isn't it, really?
It really is, yeah. And thank God I responded to the message, because we could have just gone, it's, you know, whatever, someone just saying, you know, whatever. And but that was the little thread that ended up getting us back to the States. And it's the only song really that survived that transition. And we did it as Band of Skulls as well. And yeah, whenever we play it live, I always had a wry smile on, thinking that, you know, we used to play this one to, you know, literally two men and a dog in a pub somewhere.
Who was the guy? Who was the guy that searched for you?
There's a guy called Alex that we, you know, he definitely put the deal together for us. And, you know, he was an amazing, we never really had an A&R person in our career. And we just said, we'll choose our own songs and we'll choose what we're going to do and who we are. But, you know, looking back now with my experience, he was the closest to anything like that. And he was the guy that said, "Have you ever heard Tusk?" So it was that too. And yeah, he came over and spoke to us and said, you know, what do you want to do and what's your ambition? And introduced us to some people that, you know, turned out to be our producer, Ian Davenport, and our first record label. And, you know, we had that grit of being a band and playing in London and some of that experience. And our manager Mick was with us then before as well, and still is now. So there was a tight knit group, but we needed to get out of England, I think, to really find ourselves. And when we finally had the chance, you know, we bit America's arm off. I think, you know, we were so ready to go. We were so overly ready. We're like, yes, we'll do anything. We'll open an envelope. Yeah. So, we were more than ready. And it was interesting to go through that, you know, when we hit the ground, voraciously ready. Yeah, I would say.
When you're writing songs, what's more important, a great lyric or a great melody?
I think, you know, it's a common thing. I think songs can come both ways. It can be the lyric or the song title or the first line that inspires the whole mood of the song. But also sometimes just a melody can almost it needs to find its lyric. And you as a songwriter, you can almost hear it before it arrives. And it's a magic moment before the song is finished, and only you have the song. We had it with this whole new album, where it was just a few of us that were hearing these songs and this music. And I quite like that moment, you know. Mm-hmm. Then it sort of starts to be concrete, and then you nail it down and say, that is the title and that is the lyric. But there's this magic moment in between where it could go in any direction, melodically or lyrically. And I quite like that. I often sing in absolute nonsense, and that tends to bring out the subconscious level of songwriting, where, you know, it feels like the song should go in a direction, and I don't want to force it. I want it just to be naturally to go in that way, especially with lyrics. Yeah, so both, depending on the song.
Did the lyrics come easily to you?
I think it's not easy to write for anyone, whether you're writing a book or songs. Or even like acting or writing a script. It's how you approach it. It's never easy. If you're trying to be abstract and obtuse, then you have to be really creative and trying to make something that is interesting. And if you're trying to write from the heart, you have to look in the mirror and say, this is what I want to say. And both are kind of terrifying prospects. Mm-hmm. We've made records which are super complicated and complex, and every half a line has a little hidden meaning for us, or a classic rock band, a little in-joke mixed with a real thing and abstract, really. And then the whole thing turns out to be this very multifaceted, intricate thing that we put together. That takes time, and that's a lot of work. But also just saying, I feel like this today, and I'm going to say it on a song, and I hope this comes across, is also a terrifying thing to do. And yeah, even just to listen back onto your demo to yourself, and then play it to your bandmates, and then maybe a producer or the record label. Those moments can be, fear-inducing moments. You're like, oh, is this too much? Is it not enough? But it's often it's meant to be. You get tuned into when something is right, and often it's about when you're saying that's it. I finished it. It's I don't want to over engineer something, and all you do is start to cover up the true feeling of the song if you keep going. Yeah. So this one's been about brutal honesty and completely going back to a way more personal style of writing, more so than we've done. And speaking, I can only speak for myself in a personal way, but the closest, the most open and raw, the rawest content of any song that I've been, any record I've been a part of. And it's tough sometimes, but massively rewarding when someone comes to you and says, thanks for writing that one. This happened to me. And all of a sudden you're talking about, from meeting someone, you're talking about, the human experience straight away. It's quite intense, So yeah, there's lots of ways of doing it. And writer's block is always around the corner. So I'm happy if anything comes, to be honest, It's just like, let it flow.
Yeah. But you've made 5 studio albums together as Band of Skulls, which are a heavy guitar band. And then recently you've just put out the Marsden and Richardson album, which is a completely different direction. It's more stripped down and personal. Why did you choose to do this project?
Well, firstly, it was planned. So the pandemic happened as well. So that's it kind of worked in a way, because we had this moment of reflection and, a moment of solitude, and the whole world stopped. So if you're going to make this deep search, soul searching album, then what a better time without any distractions. Anyone that knows Band of Skulls, although we're renowned for loud music, I guess some people call it rock and roll, whatever, but it's big and it's loud and it's a statement of a band. We also have songs within that world which are these tender, kind of haunting acoustic sometimes, or just songs. And we tend to just put 1 or 2 on an album because it's a sort of a strange moment where we're supposed to be this loud rock band, but we have all this other music in us. So we got to a point where we said, what if rather than putting them one song every 3 years, it's not really enough. What if we just do a whole album like that, and really, really show us the best of our songwriting ability without all of the, sometimes you get into the spectacular nature of a rock and roll band, or big studio or big production can sometimes get in the way of what you're trying to say emotionally. So the idea was to make a statement of just doing that and see if we could get to the end of a record without using any of our usual tools, and it was a fascinating experience. Yeah, that's why this record came around, and it seemed to just happen within this strange time in the rest of the world, just by coincidence, really.
It's my favorite late night record. I love the soaring melodies and orchestration. Was it a fun record to make?
Yeah, it was immensely fun because it was different, and I think personally, we had this ambition, this burning desire to make a record like this one day. There's something about, I don't think you can make this record as your first, and there's a certain amount of, at least for me and for us, you sort of feel like you deserve to do this at a certain point, or you've done all the things you set out to do, so what's next? A bit like that. The session started in lockdown in this room that you're speaking to me from now, and with an empty room, and so I built a small studio and started to put together a plan of how to start recording, and told the record label that it would be fine, and we'll do it here, because we couldn't go to London even or do anything. So that was another factor. Again, it was planned, but it was a case of, will the equipment arrive in time before whatever, all these crises that were happening across the world. The Panama the canal was going wrong, and and the computer coming from China, and the pandemic. It was just like, oh no, maybe this record's going to be delayed even more. But thankfully, with the help of a few friends, it all happened. The paint was drying on the studio walls, and we just started, and that was the biggest challenge, is just to start. It was one guitar and some microphones, and just to start this record. I remember the feeling of, oh no, will we get to the end of this very ambitious thing? We're talking about orchestras and all this. So the moment just before we started was the most mildly terrifying, and then the rest of it was a real a labor of love is probably the best way I can describe it. And we went from just laying a guitar down to this wonderful collaboration with our guy Tom Edwards, who arranged the strings. We met him a few years before. He's done some stuff for Band of Skulls, and he worked with Spiritualized. So that epic wall of sound and that emotional content, I always loved what he did. And it was just it was a date in the diary that would happen one day, so I was so pleased when we got to that moment. And he just could weave between the songs. We left some space, but he could weave and somehow just tell the stories that we wanted to say. He just lifted the record to another level and just blended with us in such a complimentary way, which I hope would happen, but you never know. It might not work in this context. So I think the first song we did was Outsider, and then we were like, okay, well, this is going to work. Rinse and repeat, please. 9 more times, and then we got to the record.
And that was also the first single. It's a fantastic single. Is that why you put it out first, because it was the first one done, really?
Yeah, maybe subconsciously. I think it had a sense of urgency, and it had this. It was earmarked for the first song on the album. Even the first line, "Where do I begin?" It seemed to be perfect, and also seemed to have all the elements of the rest of the album within it. The sweeping strings and the mini rhythm section, but with a lot of heart to it, and yet it was still big and airy. So it just felt like the right first one to do. Yeah, and it was a big, brave score as well. We were listening to all those incredible old Italian movie scores, and just getting inspiration from anywhere, especially places where rock and roll bands aren't supposed to take inspiration from. All of a sudden, we were opened up to all those old 50s records, anything made in the Capitol building, basement studio, that kind of golden era. And we were just like kids in the toy shop, saying, "Can you do this? Is this possible?" And can we make it more? And just asking for more and more, and reassuring Tom that these strings wouldn't just be adding decoration and sweetening the thing. They were going to be front and center, and often they were these big sweeping intros like you used to get on those old records would happen before any guitar was strummed. You'd have this thing tumbling down, like an old Frank Sinatra record, settling on this chord, and then the song would begin. And we were like, I love all those old records, but when you start to create one yourself, you start. It's an incredible, running around the house in lockdown, going, "Oh my god!" It sounded so luxurious. It was amazing. It felt like the most luxury thing. With only 3 people in the world hearing it, it feels like you have the Michelin chef in your house cooking your beans on toast or something. Very spoiled.
XS Noize was pleased to premiere the video for the second single, "Oh Forgiveness," in September, which is another fantastic track. It's a great video and song. What can you tell me about that song?
Oldest song on the record, and that one harks back to our days in Fleeing, New York, before Band of Skulls. So we've always done a bit of a soft heartbreaker of a song. Even back then, we would stop and do a little number. So it felt right to just give a little nod to the old times when we started writing songs together. I mean, it's old. And also, it's completely weird. Like, why were we doing a samba song? You know, what were we thinking? Yeah, I think we just wanted to. It gave a little bit of lightness to the record. It's kind of strange to look back on yourself as a songwriter then. So we write some songs for this album, and we also brought one out from an old cassette tape. Oh, there you go, an old cassette tape it was on, and it was a little bit nostalgic for us to bring that one back. And yeah, I don't know why we would have written a song like that at the beginning of our time. It's a strange thing to write first, but it was one of the first ones. So yeah, it was one of those, another in joke just for us. You know? Yeah.
My absolute favourite song on the album is Beautiful Love. I have it on constant repeat. It's on my playlist.
Nice.
You know, I don't know whether it was a single, but it definitely should be. It's a nail.
It was.
Was it?
It was. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's my research out the window. But yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. I keep on going back to that song. Tell me more.
Right. I think there was a few songs on the record when I sat down to write, I try to write every day. And sometimes you write a song, you're like, well, that's great, but where does that fit into my life? And that idea, the beginning of that idea started to pose a problem. I was like, well, what is this and where is it going? And it ended in this. It was a song that drove the concept of this album, I think. I also think it's the kind of the closest song to what could have been a Band of Skulls song. It might have been the sweetest and quietest Band of Skulls number, and it turns out to be almost the most up version of this album. So it's kind of interesting, just on the cusp between the two worlds. I think the biggest moment for me is in 2019, we did a tour on our last album, and we visited Detroit and did a show. And we've toured in America so much, but you just do venues and the road and hotels. It's a cliche, I know, but you don't see anything unless you really try. And this time we had an American tour manager, American crew, and an American drummer. And he was like, Detroit, great. You've obviously been to Motown Record. You've been to the studio. And I'm like, no. And he just couldn't believe that we'd never been. So we went. We did a show the night before, drove all the way to Detroit and got up early and went to Motown with no real expectations and just thought it's a great museum. But I went there and did the tour, the tourist tour and everything. And we got to the back of the end. Spoiler alert, at the end of the tour, you go to the studio, which is at the back. And it's just this little house, you know. It's a little house with a back room with it looks a bit like a village hall, you know, with a parquet floor and a piano and a drum kit and some steps down into it. And I didn't think I'd be affected by being there. I just thought it would be fun or interesting. And I got there, and all of a sudden, all the hairs on the back of my neck, this huge emotional feeling came over us, and I'm getting it now. And I was there, and the tour guide said, "Right, now I think we sang My Girl, like us and like four of the people on the tour group." And we're trying to be cool with a rock band on the tour, but I did it. I sang my heart out, and I was like, okay, now this is the biggest, not only for the music that we've all listened to and love, in the middle of this incredible moment. This great music was made with the littlest of means. It's a room. And it just struck me at that point. And so when we got back to making a record, I thought about that. And actually, in the same moment, we were all in the midst of that super reflective time when the Black Lives Matter movement occurred as well. And it just all came back to me. I was like, what an amazing place. What an amazing thing. And the lack of equipment or nothing stopped that great music just exploding out of that place at the time. And I feel like that, I'm not taking anything culturally inappropriately, but the respect I have for what happened there, I felt like it inspired the can-do attitude of doing that song. It's more like a normal record, but it still was made in our little studio. And it has that soulful thing. And yeah, whenever I hear the song, I just think of that moment singing My Girl in Motown, like, pretty good day off, right? Or morning off from the tour. And that was it.
now that you said it, there's definitely Motown vibes in the song. I just love it. Really, really do.
Well,
It's
thanks.
one of the best songs I've heard this year. I watched a really good documentary recently about Motown, actually. I think it was on Sky. You should check it out.
I will. I will. I've given up on TV since we've been allowed outside again. But yeah, I guess before the summer comes, I've got a few things to catch up on. Yeah, it's amazing now. And you know what is? If you ever get a chance to go to that studio or any recording studio where you might have loved a record that's been made there, I know you can do a tour of Abbey Road or whatever. Go, because as soon as you listen to a record that you love that was made in that room, it completely changes your perception of it. It's an incredible thing. So I even just going back to all those old classic records, I just think it's even more unbelievable that they were made in such a, it's just the ambition of the record is not the same as the room. It's a room. And that's what that blew my mind. Every amazing record happened with human beings in a room, and it still can. That's the most amazing thing about music.
Which song on the album means the most to you?
Well, they all do. The whole record to me means a lot as a thing. The record, the song that's the most personal is a song called Mama that's on the record. And, I'm not a piano player and I'm a guitar player really. And I taught myself the guitar. So, it's even a miracle I can do that. But piano, I've only started really seriously in the last couple of years. And I wrote lots of the songs on the album on piano. Mama was another tune that made me have to make a record like this. That's not going to go on a Band of Skulls record. It would be weird. And I had this song and I had this music and I just kept on with it and kept on with it. And it was speaking to me about something I didn't quite know what it was. I was feeling emotional just with the music. And that's a really great sign for anything. I was like, right, what is this? I sat down and I wanted to write something. I started off with a kind of retrospective vibe, and the song is in 3 parts. And the first part of the song, I sang about my childhood, which is emotional for anybody. And I just felt this moment. I think it was lockdown that did it. I just remember growing up, and I remember that feeling of being, I'm so lucky, loved and cared for, and that feeling of safety, which is what every kid deserves. And I thought, well, this is a great start of a song. Everyone deserves this. And so that's where it started. And then I didn't want to write a whole song about that because I thought, it's a little bit self-indulgent or it's a bit boring, to be honest. And I got to this point where I thought, well, I think this song is starting off about my mother and about women and everyone has a mother. So it felt that's the beginning. And in the middle of the song, I drew upon a recent thing which happened to me and my wife, which is we suffered miscarriage, and lost a baby and realized that wasn't the path of our life that we thought might happen. Of course, everyone has that hope, or you don't really think about it until you have that that change in your direction. So it was a very difficult time, and it took a couple of years for the emotion to come out. And the middle of the song is about that, and about the strength of the strength of women that can't be a mother even if they want to be. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm really deep into this now. And I thought, well, this song has got 2 parts. And these are the 2 parts. And the third part, I didn't know what to write. So in the end, I just imagined a life for in a way, a daughter that didn't get to arrive, And when I got to that point, I realized that it for me was the perfect 3-part song, in 3 acts. And I just think, I thought about hanging up my ivories after that. I was like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to beat this. I don't think I've said so much in so little time. And I played it. I found it difficult to write. I was getting emotional at the piano writing. I found it difficult to record. I found it difficult to do the video, and I just performed it live last week. And difficult doesn't mean bad. And in the end, I think it's the most perfect song, in my opinion, I've written for myself. And having so much invested in it, and then also sharing that much is also the maximum I've ever done of that. So, and of course, that's the sort of thing where people come back to you and say, this has happened to me. you don't think that when you sat down, you're thinking about your own thing, but just putting it out there. Of course, lots of people have been through similar things, and I had to do it, and I had to speak to my wife and say, can I do this song? What do you think? And that was an interesting thing as well. And she said, I think it'd be really good. I think it's really, I think it's an interesting thing because guys don't really talk about this. Of course, we just go through experiences like that. But of course, it's still a tricky time. So I thought, I'll put myself out on the line, and if it speaks to anybody else, that would be a bonus. And I feel like it's a fitting tribute to that moment in my life. And and I found the extreme version of digging the deepest and putting the rawest emotion onto a record that I've ever done. So I don't know what it's like to be an actor, but like they say, imagine the saddest thing and go there. And if you're doing acting, so it was like that, but without the acting, because it was real, and it was like an intense, but very a cathartic and rewarding thing when I got through it. But I didn't realize I was going to go there, and I just found myself in this place, and I'm really proud of that one. And I think I have to be in the right place to listen to it myself. Even it feels like something else out there.
It's a beautiful song, really, really
well,
is.
thank you.
Is this album going to be a one-off, or do you plan to do more in the future?
I mean, it's not planned to be a one-off. I think it adds to, hopefully it shows, our interest in all kinds of music, and it kind of just broadens the perspective of it. I mean, I'd love to make a record like this with somebody else and dig deep into someone else's songwriting that perhaps hasn't gone there as well, So this record will be my first production as well. So I think that's the other thing. Would I do that again? Be the artist and the producer? Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit too ridiculous, But I think every songwriter's got like these hidden depths. So it might not be the last of mine, or for me. But I think it would be fascinating to work with another artist or a band and see if a record like this is in somebody else, not in the same style, just in the same commitment to digging that deep into your emotional life, So if it ever comes around, I'll kind of know, I'll have my experience to draw upon, I think. And I think it's interesting for all songwriters to go through their life and try different things. And I'd love to be there when someone else finds that moment. That would be fascinating for me personally. Yeah.
Marsden and Richardson played an exclusive live performance at London's St Pancras Old Church in February. So how was it performing it live for the first time?
Well, not only was it for the first time, it was our first ever show in since 2019. So it was incredibly exciting and amazing just to perform again. It was fantastic. We had 6 string players, just like the album, and then it was Emma and I going between guitars and then a Fender Rhodes piano, which was the other instrument on the record you might hear if you know those sort of things. And so we took a few things from the studio, put them in this church, and did it. And it was one of those over in a flash. But it was amazing to see those songs outside of our own world. And it's symbolic of them going off now to be everybody else's. Like whenever a record is finished, it sort of stops being yours, you kind of give it away and you give it over to everybody else's thing. It was lovely. We did the show, and towards the end I was like, well, home straight now. I think we've pulled this one off. So I had a little minute there where I was busy on the piano to just look up and just scan the audience. So I thought I'll just check if everyone's having a good time. So I looked up, and as I looked across the first couple of rows there, everybody was in floods of tears. And I was like, oh God, this is a new one. People normally are like jumping around, like crowd surfing or whatever. I was like, everyone's crying. Well, either it's really out of tune or we're striking a chord here. We're hitting a nerve. And so I hope it was the latter. And that was the point where I had to remember that I was doing a gig and I couldn't be a part of this. There's an orchestra behind me, giving it full full beans, and like in a movie when the strings swell up, you're supposed to get emotional, right? Yeah. So I had to concentrate there, hit the next chord, and but yeah, an amazing electric feeling in the room because of that, and for an acoustic show, very electric, and and one of those things, amazing, and ambition unlocked as well. I've always wanted to do something like that, and it felt like the right moment, and everything was just perfect. So incredible, and never had so many bandmates on stage. There's loads of us up there.
Do you have more shows planned?
More shows for sure. I'm not sure we'll do quite the same thing with all of that, but yeah, I mean, I love playing and performing. So yeah, I mean, it could be that, it could be something different, and I forgot how much excitement and adrenaline I got, and just joy from performing. It's just great. I did want to just turn a guitar up and smash some chords out, but which I couldn't do. So I was just probably playing the acoustic out of tune. So I've definitely got a need to hear some wall of amps screaming from the back line. So yeah, I mean, that's probably next for me. That's what I want to do next. I think just make a lot of noise.
I like to ask my guests the following questions. Out of all the albums in your collection, who do you have the most albums by?
The Beatles and Band of Skulls. I got one each of those. They're both in the B section, so whatever. The Beatles, and solo Beatles. Yeah.
Which song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Well, we always used to say there's no guilty pleasures in music, but of course there are. Guilty pleasure, I would say something like things that other people don't like, really, isn't it? I'm a massive fan of those 50s bachelor pad space age records, the sort of thing they get used on, like, so I'm thinking of there's a great one of the best one is this Mexican guy. They were band leaders, really. It was jazz band leaders before they realized what rock and roll was, and there's this weird bit in the middle where single men would smoke cigarettes indoors to invite people over. There's the best one is Esquivel, who's this Mexican version, which is just the most bonkers one. And if you play it, you'll know, everybody knows it. It's just and it's when they've discovered stereo, so someone's got the control, just making like xylophones just go between the speakers. Yeah, so I'd say Esquivel's, I think it's called like bachelor pad music or space age, whatever. So all of that. If I get an ASBO for noise in my neighborhood, I'm playing that. They can't arrest me, right?
Which song would you play for someone who has never heard music before?
Oh dear, that's an amazing one. I think anything would blow their minds.
Well, I'll give you an idea. Mine would be "Imagine" by John Lennon.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I think I'd go. I have to go. I'm gonna go left field on this one and just say something out there, like I think something like Diane Wood or something like that. What's one of those records? Yeah. Some banging thing, something really obnoxious. Yeah.
If it was them, you would have to show the videos as well.
Yeah, one of their long videos where there's like a scene before. Yeah, one of those records. Something extreme, or Peaches.
Yeah, they're crazy.
But in seriousness, I think I would go for something magnificent. I think I'll have, just today, I quite fancy, I think I'll have Quicksand, David Bowie. That's what I fancy.
Good tune.
Something good like, tune. End of the worldy. Yeah. Something apocalyptic. Yeah, something like that. Something sentimental, life on Mars.
So what's next? What's next in the immediate future for Marsden and Richardson?
I've got a few things. I mean, the most incredible thing about taking on a record to produce a record is I've proved to myself that I can do that. So I've been talking to a lot of people and working with some other bands. So I've been working with some young bands in America over the internet, which is just another incredible moment. I've been working with a band called Wisteria Lodge, who exists within the universe of Twin Peaks. Incredible. And that's like synth dream pop. So I've been doing that. And I've been working on some productions of some other artists. And I think that's the most rewarding kind of offshoot from this process. And beyond that, I think by making something so delicate and quiet and heartfelt, I have this massive need to make a lot of noise again. So, with the world opening up, I just want to strap on a guitar and make something. I think make something modern and loud. I think this last few years and also making this record now is a very nice marker to be able to reinvent. I feel like I'm allowed to now.
Yeah.
I've done something so different that it's opened up it's widened the goalposts. To if you're playing football with jumpers for goalposts, one of those blown to the side. I just feel like there's anything's possible now. So I'm just up for being creative and working with as many people as I can, and making lots of beautiful music. I think that's it really. After just not being able to do everything we wanted to, especially meet with other people and other humans, I know what solitude is now and what music that makes. So frankly, I'd like to do the opposite now, and I want to make gregarious music. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Well, good. I look forward to hearing it, whether it be in the form of Marsden and Richardson or the next Band of Skulls album. I really love this album. It's fantastic. So I wish you all the best with it, and hopefully see you down the road sometime at playing live shows in Ireland and back in the UK or whatever.
I would love to. Obviously love the road, and I love to be back in Ireland very soon, always. And I'll see you there. Thanks for listening to the record, and I hope anyone listening can get some joy out of the music too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for taking the time to do this.